Welcome to Studying Law Around the World. I'm Claudio Klaus. In each episode, I talk with lawyers, law students, and professors from different parts of the world to talk about legal education, careers, and what the profession looks like in real life. We talk about the hard parts, the surprises, and the decisions that shaped their paths. Whether you're planning to study abroad, thinking about working in another legal system, or just curious about how law works around the world, this podcast is for you. This episode of Studying Law Around the World is proudly sponsored by ITL Prep from Emond Exam Prep, the comprehensive resource designed specifically for internationally trained lawyers preparing for the NCA exams. We understand that the NCA accreditation journey can feel overwhelming. You can face many obstacles getting to success. Courses that cost too much, offer too little, or leave you more confused than when you started. That's why Emond Exam Prep created ITL Prep, a smarter, more reliable way to succeed. Our module-based self-study courses and expert-led review sessions are designed by actual law professors, many of whom are ITLs themselves or teach at international law schools. They know the NCA process, they understand your journey, and they've built these courses to guide you clearly through the NCA syllabi, helping you gain the understanding you need to be at your best for success on your exams. With ITL Prep, you'll gain confidence and clarity, whether it's foundational concepts or you're tackling specialized Canadian law topics. It's affordable, it's flexible, it's built with you in mind. And right now, we're offering something special. As an exclusive offer for the Studying Law Around the World podcast listeners, ITL Prep is offering 50% off all courses for the first 50 purchases. Simply use the promo code ITL50 at checkout. Casebooks and other resources must be purchased separately. Visit emond.ca today, that's emond.ca, and use promo code ITL50 to claim your 50% discount on NCA exam preparation courses. Today, I have the opportunity to interview Yonida Koukio. She is a corporate lawyer and has a very, very interesting practice, both in corporate and intellectual property law. She also is a tech and innovation enthusiast. She works closely with innovative startups at all stages of their business, all the way from transactions, inception, up to going public transactions as well. So super excited to get to know a little more about her story and her background. And to start our podcast today, wanted to thank you once again for joining us today, Yonida. And I wanted to ask you if you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. Claudio, I'm Yonida. I'm a corporate and technology lawyer at Oziel Law, which is a boutique technology law firm in Toronto. I work with startups at all stages of their business, from inception up to an exit, with work that includes structuring their business, raising capital, restructuring, up to M&A or go public transactions. But that includes a lot of the times drafting technology agreements for them, employment, privacy, everything that they require to grow and to exit. They may come to us with unique questions, so we're trying to always be ahead and anticipate their needs. At the same time, I also lead the firm's innovation projects, which includes testing software, implementing software, coming up with legal tech solutions internally that our clients can benefit from, and trying to structure legal services as a product. So clients can predict fees and they know exactly what they're getting with more predictable fees.
Amazing. And from what I saw on your profile here as I was preparing for this podcast, I saw that you've practiced law both in Greece and Canada. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about, this path from Athens to Toronto, and also what cultural or professional lenses you bring to your practice today.
It wasn't a fast transition, I would say. I mean, it was 2015 and Greece was going through a financial crisis, and me and my partner then were considering options. And when we looked online, we're like, okay, it seems like there's an NCA process. There's some exams. We'll write them. And then we have to do some articling. That's fine. We'll do it. I mean, it was like that easy scenario in our minds. And when we moved here, it was everything but that. So we had to navigate the NCA, the National Committee on Accreditation process, apply, told that we are coming from a civil law jurisdiction. It's not going to be as straightforward as we expected. And because we didn't study in a common law jurisdiction, they asked us to to basically go back to school. And we had just completed an LLM degree at the time. And we're like, do we really want to do another one? And so we did because it made sense at the time. And we did that. I then proceeded to try to navigate the system to find articling. And then I ended up doing the law practice one placement. So it basically transitioned from litigation that I was practicing back home to corporate. And it wasn't an easy transition because people treat you in any event when you move countries that you don't have Canadian experience. So you're really starting from scratch. But even when you're when you're transitioning practice areas, they really treat you like someone who has no experience. And I think that's a mistake because when you've practiced before, you bring in that maturity and that's independence of work. And that translates to working with clients, even if you're in a different practice area. And that's not really recognized. Any law firm that I worked, they're like, I'm treating you as a junior, you don't know anything, I'm training you from scratch. But that maturity comes through. So I always tell employers to think about who they're hiring because they're coming with experience. So it's up to them to use that experience and instead of treating them as someone. So I feel like in terms of cultural and professional lessons, besides the fact that this is a personality trait, but I feel like the responsibility that comes with you taking on a task and following through and building trust, being reliant on like when someone gives you something, you go ahead and do it and you don't breach that trust. I think being self-motivated, showing initiatives are really important. And I think those are the things that I used to do back home that helped me grow in my career here as well.
Amazing. And you just mentioned the matters on technology and law that you do in your current role and also all throughout your career. So I wanted to ask you a little more about that. You have a specific point that you could say that it's when you first became interested in innovation or that has developed over the years. What's your experience like with, innovation and technology, and how does that play a role in your practice and in your approach in the work?
So I asked myself the same, when did it start? And I think the earliest I can think about was when I graduated from law school. There was a team of us that we were trying to think in an entrepreneurial way. And at the time, Greece did not have a centralized system where you can search up recent legislative updates like case law. So we tried to digitize it. But there was one of us had secured the domain name, and there was a team of us who, whenever something was published, we went and we updated. So it was like a big team. It was a volunteer initiative. It started, kind of died because there was no funding. Everyone had a day job. So kind of dropped it at the end. But I think that behind it came the realization that all of us were interested in a more innovative way of practicing law. Because at the time, you just go and find a journal that was published and find the case law and read about it. And then moving forward, I had moved to Toronto when a team of us was based internationally, got together and we're like, let's come up with a startup idea. So the idea we thought that there was a need in Greece at the time was connecting lawyers with other lawyers because in Greece is predominantly law firms are mostly small law firms. So they're not like big law firms that you will see here, like national firms. Like 80%, I think, of the lawyers practice solo or in a small setting. So when someone needs to delegate some work in a different city, they had to travel. So we're like, let's just connect those lawyers into a platform. And this is how we came up with Local, so which was lawyers connected through a platform. So we designed the platform, we had a developer, we were thinking, okay, so raising funds, all those issues that come up, like founders disagreeing. We actually got some awards. And so I love that process. Of course, the fact that everyone was based internationally, different time zones, that didn't help. And having multiple founders, more than three, I realized is an issue. At some point, there's friction, and well, that didn't last long, but I was left with great lessons. And at the time, I was at Osgood, and Osgood had launched this Institute for the Future of Law Practice program partnership with the universities in Chicago and Colorado. So I had the opportunity to be the only LLM student that attended this iFlip Institute for the Future of Law Practice for a bootcamp at the Northwestern Law in Chicago. It was an amazing program. And we were speaking with the most forward-looking lawyers or people in legal tech at the time. We did some coding. We were trying to think about how to solve solutions in law through legal tech. So it was amazing. So when I came back, I'm like, well, this is how everyone should practice. it's more efficient. Clients are expecting predictability, all of that. That didn't really help me with OCIs because I was talking in a language that no one understood. So in the end, after many rounds of OCIs, I didn't really fall into the traditional law student category. So that didn't really work out. But I knew that this is a way we can practice, being forward looking and implement technology in a way that solves solutions, solves problems, but not necessarily not being the only solution. So I can explain a bit more what I mean by that. But generally, after that, stayed. I did a couple of internships, Ben Jones and McCarthy's, and then after those were completed, I stayed on at McCarthy's to do my law practice program placement to get qualified. And after I was qualified, COVID hit, so I wasn't hired back. And then I found myself trying to navigate the Canadian legal market, the hidden legal market. And I was speaking with many lawyers, and I was trying to understand the system and to see where I fit because I didn't see myself as a traditional lawyer, but I wanted to practice. So that's where when I met the managing partner at the firm that I'm at now, Alan Oziel. So we were talking about innovation and technology, and he had built this amazing law firm. Everything was automated. He was very forward looking at the time, like Zoom meetings and everything before Zoom became the only way to have meetings. And when we asked me, it's like, okay, what if I gave you an opportunity to work here? What would that be? I said, I think it would be a hybrid role where I'm 80% a corporate tech lawyer and 20% an innovation specialist. So he's like, okay, let's do it. So ever since I'm here, and it's been a great opportunity. But I think this is my 5th year.
Fantastic. What a story. I'm sure that many professionals like me look up to you. I just mentioned to you that I had the opportunity to watch a panel in which you presented back in 2022. And I still remember hearing a little bit about your story and how really in a way you carved out the role that you have today, which is so amazing. And I wanted to ask you, thinking about early career professional.
If someone asked me about my advice, I would say generally don't follow any advice because sometimes that advice can be well-meaning, but it can be discouraging because people are trying to tell you, look out for this and that. One piece of advice that I would give is that don't be afraid to take up space because I speak with many foreign trained lawyers and they think that they are taking up my time or I don't want to bother. I don't want to intrude. I don't want to reach out to this person. They're not going to respond or they're busy. It's like, let that person decide. If you have to do one thing, you know what you want to do because you are definitely going to take someone's time. So it better be worth it. I speak with foreign trade lawyers all the time. I book those mentoring calls. And sometimes they're like, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, I think you should figure that out because employers don't have time to sit with you and say, let's see what you find interesting. They really want you to be like, I did this back home and I enjoyed it and I want to keep doing this, or I did this back home and I know that I'm not going to do this here. So I've tested X, Y, and Z and I know that I like X and you do X. So that's why I'm talking to you. So be specific. Don't be afraid to take up people's time. In 2020, when I was networking 2 full-time jobs, I was meeting with practice group leads on Bay Street and their hourly rate was over 1,000. And I'm like, you know what? You promised me half an hour. I'm going to take it. So during that, I was specific. I knew exactly what I'm asking them. I was professional, but I did not feel sorry or I did not feel apologetic for taking their time. So this is what I tell, don't be shy, go for it, know what you want and go for it.
Amazing advice. Absolutely. And I know that beyond your professional practice or as a part of it as well, you're very much involved with multiple initiatives, including one that is called Accelerate Greece. So I see that there's an innovation ecosystem, startups, and all of that happening. And I find it so awesome to see this kind of initiative happening in the city. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, this, what excites you the most when you're working with founders, when you see people trying out, and I guess you had that founder experience a little bit as well. So what is that like for you?
So I think that there are 2 questions there, Accelerate Greece and working with founders. For Accelerate Greece, this was a program that was launched by Peter Polidor, who is a entrepreneur, investor. He's amazing. And he built this program where he allowed Greek scale-ups to apply. And basically the program selects 3 companies that can benefit from attending a week-long program in North America. It used to be in California. Now we brought it to Toronto and we structure it as mentorship sessions. And in Toronto, we have partnered with Elevate. So we allow our companies to access Elevate and their network. So investors founders, etc. I think it's a great program because looking back, it's from because I've kept in touch with funds in Greece, companies in Greece, and what I'm seeing is that they are great at taking companies up to the next level, scaling, like growing them. But scaling is a different conversation. So, and they don't have as many examples, which is more common in North America. So, what we're thinking is, okay, let's put together our networks and see how we can help them take their products or services, introduce them to North American markets, create those partnerships, expand their presence, not necessarily leave Greece, but create another channel of distribution of their services and products. And from the feedback that we've received so far, everyone's finding it very beneficial. When I left Greece, I said, okay, I want to get to a point in my life where I can give back because I wasn't I wasn't born in Greece. I moved there when I was 10 and I really felt that hospitality and people giving to me. So when I left Greece in 2015, felt like I really want to give back. And this is a way of me giving back and working with founders and companies and technology companies, because this is what I do on a day-to-day basis in my job. I felt like I could bring the perspective of, okay, let me tell you, if you need to do this properly, if you need to not exit, but expand from Greece, what do investors want to see? How are you structuring those agreements with the partnership agreements? So, and I love being part of their journey because I feel like they're at this stage where they need people, they need allies, and I love being part of their growth. From working with companies, what I found, like the most common thing, the pattern that comes up when I represent clients is that they don't necessarily need a lawyer, they need a business advisor. And they come to you and they say, "Hey," like basically unload whatever problems they have or they think they have. And they're like, okay, I have these issues. I'm just bringing them to you. You structure them into what you think that should happen and tell me what to do. So, and as a lawyer, they don't necessarily care to say, okay, the law stands for this, stands here or there. They need to know what is the best business decision. And sometimes I tell them, this is what the law says. This is what makes sense from a business perspective. And to get to this point, I feel like has been the most rewarding part of my journey. Because lawyers, just being lawyers, I feel like there's only so much course, some place you can get. Becoming a business advisor, you can be someone who's indispensable.
Fantastic. And I'd love to hear a little more about continually on this day-to-day practice and what that looks like. So you mentioned a little bit about this work with founders, and we've talked about some of your work with technology and so forth. And I was curious to know too, is there such a thing as, a few common threads that you see that either in the legal side or in the advising slash strategy side for tech startups or really startups in general when they're either entering or expanding in Canada?
Yeah. I think there are some patterns and you can see them a more obvious pattern when they are coming from civil law or common law. And this kind of goes against my advice to foreign trained lawyers when I tell them when you're interviewing, stop emphasizing the differences. Focus on these similarities. And to me, having practiced in both a civil law jurisdiction and a common law one, the way I explain it's like you, the judge, the judges issue a decision, although in the common law system, that decision becomes law. In a civil law jurisdiction, it's not that the judges of lower courts can disregard it because it's not law. They still follow it. So it's still used from an interpretation standpoint. Essentially, what um, it's how you recognize this decision. But the effect is the same. It may not be law, but it's still guidance in how you interpret the law. Essentially, these systems are not any different. This is what I explain the differences when I'm interviewing or when I speak with during mentorship session. At the same time, when I'm representing clients, I can see that when they're coming from a civil law jurisdiction, their agreements are much simpler. They don't really focus so much on the agreement because they can always rely on the civil code to interpret everything. So when they come here, I tell them, okay, treat this as a more formal system of like everything needs to be in writing. That agreement that it's like a 2-page agreement in your country. Here needs to be a 20-page document because here every decision of the court becomes law. So that affects how you interpret that agreement. So you have to be explicit. So this is one. The second one is understanding the system. They might come. I think Greece is a system where there's a lot of bureaucracy on how you achieve things. Like layers of approval, but at the same time, at times it seems more informal. Here, it seems like everything has to go by the book. So I tell them like if you want to, for example, to establish a subsidiary. There are ways for you to do this if you want investors to treat you seriously. First, your structure, your IP, your value, you need to be clear in this subsidiary when you're expanding here. And because you may have investors in your country back home, or you might have assets in that company, you have to think about like strategically how you want to divide that value. So thinking through those considerations is what makes my job interesting. Also, something that comes up a lot is pitching. Like they come to me and they think that they have a clear idea. And this comes up a lot in the companies that come through race during accelerate race. They think that what they sell is pretty clear. So and then I tell them, what you're in the business of what? And they give me something and I'm like, what does that mean? I'm not in the industry. I don't understand. And they keep it elaborating. That doesn't add more clarity. So I tell them like, there is a formula in what you're trying to describe. So you have to understand that formula based on North American side. Pitching is another thing. And as I mentioned, understanding what your partners here, your investors here, your clients here are expecting to see in terms of like standard of service, or the way you structure those agreements with them, like your terms of use on the website. I don't know, investment agreement, it's a subscription, shares, who is part of this company, how it cannot just be like a register that you write names down. You have everything to have it properly in proper agreements. So understanding those differences, I feel like it takes some educational component when you interact with those clients. It oftentimes takes more time to like and a lot more hand holding to bring them here and to help them succeed.
Thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to ask you, after your role on innovation projects and testing software and all of that, what have you learned about bringing innovation into a law firm environment? You did mention that you joined a firm that was already known for being innovative, that they already had lots of automation going on. So I'm really curious to know what that felt like.
I think that before I should preface this by saying that the firm that I joined was already ahead of what I was seeing out there. Generally speaking, though, because I was at larger firms before, and we were testing automation tools, or we were testing client service innovation in general, like how you can be more innovative when you're serving your clients. And I think the difference is between those larger firms and the smaller firm is the layers of approval. So think about something, there are many layers of approval because there are many stakeholders involved. For example, in a large firm, you want to bring in a tool that cuts the time that lawyers spend on drafting in half. How are you going to bring that revenue that will be missing if you do the work in half the time? So these are the things that you have to think holistically before you bring in technology. At a smaller firm, at the same time, you're dealing with clients that larger firms have clients that usually don't push back on bills. And now lately they have. So that's why they're trying to think outside the box and to bring more value to them. But so they are responding to that pressure. But smaller firm always had that pressure because they're dealing with clients that don't want to pay the full hours. I'm dealing with startups who are bootstrapped and they come to me and they say, I need to know exactly how much I'm spending on this. Otherwise, I'm not hiring you. And as a lawyer, as an innovation specialist, I try to be accountable to both the client who comes to me and they say, said 4 or 5 hours, I'm not paying for more. So figure it out how you're going to make that happen, and accountable to the firm because I cannot go and spend 10 hours and then write down my time. So that's where the conversation starts about bringing innovation in. How can we cut the time that basically is admin work, like a precedent that we can perhaps automate with a simple questionnaire that has conditional logic that can just give you the first draft where you don't have to control F and replace the name of the client and spend half an hour on things that could have had the precedent ready. So, because in any event, that time you could not have not built to these clients, to the startup clients. And how you otherwise bring value where you tell them, okay, this is a suite of documents. It took me zero time to prepare because I can automate it and I can bring you the value of like spending that time on advising you instead of working on templates that in and by themselves like don't really bring enough value if someone does not know how to use them. Generally, it's and then thinking about what clients really need. They need a business person. So you have to think as a business person where they come to you and they say, "I'm going to keep you along in my journey," but you also have to understand that there are going to be times that I cannot really pay for those services, and those times are usually before they fundraise. So you have to think about how to help them in those waves of before the fundraising or when they're bootstrapping. So I feel like this it has me as more entrepreneurial. So when I implement technology at the firm, what I have to think in mind is the client and also which wants to get value for and pay less and the people. that we're trying to help to give the value to the client. So it's our people. We don't want them to spend time at work when they do admin work. They don't feel incentivized. They could just be doing this anywhere else. You want them to just eliminate all that admin and let them focus on the actual. So this is what we're trying to when we're implementing tools. We're like, let's see, does it add value? So let's create a team of early adopters. Let's test it. Let's get feedback, and then let's adopt it. And when we adopt it, let's just have those recurring meetings like annually or whatever to see, does it work? Does it not? What can we push back on? And this is like the exciting part because you're seeing that you're making a difference in your client's life and in your colleagues' life.
Fantastic. Well, to wrap up today's episode, you gave already a really, really nice piece of advice for people who are looking into occupying space and really finding and carving out those opportunities. But I also wanted to ask you, specifically in technology, intellectual property law, what trends should young lawyers be paying attention to if they want to build a future in this space? Are there a few things that you think that they should be looking into as early as possible?
In terms of like industry trends, I feel like they are always very visible. So in the a couple of years ago, it was metaverse, NFTs. Now it's AI. So you kind of, I think it's impossible to miss. The advice would be just follow those cues and keep being curious and read about them. See how they affect generally how we practice law. For example, AI. Now there's a big focus on AI. See how it affects privacy laws, cybersecurity, IP, so all of those legal aspects, and see how you can bring value from your experience. Like if you have something in your background or in your prior legal experience that has touches on these areas, try to see how you can find that angle, find that niche, and bring your expertise into that. And for example, these are like industry specific. But if I'm talking about like technology law or corporate and technology law, what I would say is like if someone is trying to get into those areas, a lot of or like privacy. A lot of the times people come to me and with buzzwords and they say, I like technology. And I'm like, okay, so what do you think that I do? And they don't know. And that was me in the past where I approached lawyers and I said, I want to do startup law and I want to do technology law. And they're like, but do you really know what that is? And I had a very vague idea of what it was. But by speaking with them and getting concrete answers about what it was, helped me one, find a job because knew what it meant. And two, to be more specific that I may not necessarily just want to do that. And initially I said that I would just want to do startup law and technology law. Startup law, it's basically getting to the startup, giving startups the minimum they need to get started and go, because they will fix everything when they fundraise. Even if they have like the absolute minimum viable product in terms of legal documents, they will update everything when they fundraise. And technologies, master service agreements, SaaS agreements, all of these things, how many of those do you want to prepare in your lifetime before you get bored? So I'm like, okay, now I understand that I like these, not as a focus on my practice. So what I tell lawyers that come to me and they want to get into space, know what you're talking about. Speak with lawyers who are doing this. So you come out as more knowledgeable and knowing what you want. And now going back and after speaking with experts, they're like, it's easier, especially when in times of crisis, like during COVID, it's easier for you to sell yourself as a generalist at the time, especially if you're junior, because you are ready to wear whatever hat is needed to find a job, to help the firm, generate revenue. So understand what brings that revenue. And it might not be privacy law. It may or may not, but more often than not, it's usually or restructurings. Those are the things that really pay. So be open to doing all corporate work. So be ready to do those things. And then you can specialize as you go. So I think it was the biggest lesson because I was always like niche, innovation, technology. And now it's like, let's go back to basics, corporate commercial. Know that well and apply that as you progress and you become an expert in your area.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and answer a few questions here on the podcast. And thank you all for tuning into today's episode.
Amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope everyone found it useful and everyone feel free to reach out if you have any questions.